So, ooh, let's move on to English language paper 2. So as I mentioned before, this has the exact same marking criteria. So you should just be carrying on the exact same skills from paper 1 to paper 2. However, this paper is a lot more comparative. You have to compare two sources. So the biggest piece of advice, pardon me, that I can probably give you is focus on both sources at the same time. It can be really, it can feel really natural to think, okay, well, I'm just going to look at source A because I understand source A, and I'm going to get into this, and then you can run out of time to talk about source B. And as we will go on to see, there are some questions, well, in any question where you're being asked to compare, if you only talk about one source, you're going to really limit yourself with the amount of marks that you can get. So I always say to people, if you ever write something about source A, you have a couple of sentences where you analyze that, and then the next thing you talk about source B. So always have it in a balance. There are lots of ways that you can link these sections. So I would always recommend having a little bank of like linking words. So like, again, in this example, firstly in source A, similarly in source B. So again, you could use words like however, moreover, on one hand, on the other hand, whilst, likewise. For this paper, it's always really good to think of your examiners as aliens. They have just landed. They do not understand anything about English language, about English. So it's really important that you make everything super clear and kind of spell things out for the examiners. This is all about your ability to make inferences from the text, show that you understand the text, and then use your comparative analysis skills. So always try to think about it as you're explaining things to people who know nothing about the subject. So with question 1, it's all about AO1, which is your ability to understand and make inferences from the text. It's worth 4 marks. It's very similar to the question 1 in the first paper. So you're asked to reread, again, a short section, and then shade in the statements that are true. So, excuse me. For example, in this one, shade the circles in the box that you think are true, choose a maximum of 4 statements because it's worth 4 marks. It gives you the section that you're looking at, so it's lines 1 to 7, and then it gives you 8 statements, and you have to judge, and based on your understanding of the text, work out whether or not you think something is correct. So as you can see in the answer in the marking scheme, it goes FT, 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 FT. So it's very, very simple. It's not always in that sort of a rhythm. So again, it's like the writer is at the start of his journey, so there will be something, I think, if I remember correctly from that source, it's something like, if you got a statement like this, the writer is at the start of his journey, you would either see a sentence that's like, it has been 12 days since my journey began into my 5-month trip, in which you could say, okay, yeah, the writer's still at the start of his journey. But if it said something like, I am 12 days into my 2-week journey, then you'd be like, oh, well, he's only got 2 days left. It's all about making inferences like that. So again, we're going to let you have a little chance at doing that. So I'm going to open up the chat again. Just I'm not gonna mute myself or take myself away. Just have a look at read the first part of source A from lines 1 to 10. Choose 4 statements below which are true. So you have the statements on the left, pardon me, and then you have the extract on the right. So the first statement, the cinema program was every Saturday morning. Can you tell me whether that is true or false? And I will give you a clue. It is in the first section. It's in the first sentence, whether this is true or false. Can anyone tell me if it is true or false? Wait a second. Again, this question is, as long as you understand what's going on, it can be as simple as this kind of thing. Who's going to tell me? Well, I'll tell you. Oh, hello. That's going on a bit. Statement A is true. The cinema program was every Saturday morning, and literally the first three words of the extract are every Saturday morning. So it tells you that that statement is true. Statement B, the cinema program was short. Can anyone tell me in the second sentence whether this statement is true or false? False. Exactly. Very good. It literally says the program just went on and on and on. Section C, statement C. The children all came from the same street. Is there anything to suggest that this is not the case? That the children all came from the same street. Is that true or is that false? It is false. Yes, exactly. The children are not all from the same street. There's children from Margaret Street, Irene Street, Sunbeam Street, and so on. The children formed a large group as they moved through the streets. Is that true or is that false? There is a specific word that tells you exactly whether that is true or not. Exactly, yes. So D is true. You know that by the fact that the writer has chosen the word swarm. So a swarm of children. So that tells you that they did form a large group. E, the Odeon was in Rockdale. Is that true or is that false? Is the Odeon in Rockdale? E is true. Yes, exactly. It literally says moving along the rocky road, the rocky road, moving along the Rocky Point Road towards Rockdale, where the Odeon stood. The Odeon is in Rockdale. Children wore shoes. Is that true or is that false? And again, there is one word that literally tells you whether or not this statement is true. Exactly. They have bare. Oh, it's skipped again. Exactly. They have bare feet. Very key. G, the children went to the cinema on foot. Is that true or is that false? That the children went on foot, so they didn't go, or did they not go on bikes? Yes, they did go. It's true that they went on foot, because again, it talks about the fact that they were walking barefoot. And then H, finally, the children had really tough feet. Is there anything that indicates that that statement is true or false, that they had rough feet? For what is that? H. Yes, exactly. So it is true. Again, next to the bare feet, it says leathery. So again, leathery has connotations of being really tough. So yes, the children had really tough feet. As you can see, again, this question is something that shouldn't take you too long. It's quite self-explanatory, and as long as you understand and can make appropriate inferences, as you can all see, this is the marking scheme, then you will be absolutely fine with this question. So question 2. This goes on to AO 1 again. Excuse me, I'm going to have a little sip of water. So it's worth 8 marks. So again, I would be thinking about maybe 3 or 4 aspects to analyze. You're being asked to compare using PEA. So again, use PEA. Make sure that you're making your points, you're providing the quotes, and you're analyzing that in detail. So you have to compare both sources. So again, I would use the rule of, like, if you say one thing about one source, don't move on to a different point until you have talked about whether that is the same or different in the second source. So for example, this is what one of the questions might be worded. Worded along the lines of the writers in source A and B are traveling on different types of trains. Use details from both sources to write a summary of what you understand about the differences between the two trains. So again, pick maybe, like, if there are four differences, then pick 4. If there's 3, think about the 3 and analyze that in a lot of depth. And again, if you only use one source, you only get a certain amount of marks. I think the marking scheme says something along the lines of if L1 is achieved, but it's only used with source A, give them a maximum of 3 marks. And again, it's worth 8. So you really don't want to be missing out on those key points. So we're going to just go over some examples of, like, the different types of answers that you could give. So how you can get from a level 1 answer to a level 4 answer. again, before you go on to talk about it, I would recommend taking those different colored pencils, circling, well, so for example, this one wants you to talk about the differences. So I would take a pencil and circle anything in source A that it tells you about train travel. And then I would take the same colored pencil, but for source B, I would underline the differences. Again, just so that you have specific things to reference back to. So a level 1 answer for this question would be something along the lines of the train in source A is big as it has lots of carriages because it says 5 sleeping cars. This is different to the train in source B, which is smaller. The train in source B is not big as it is described as a little engine and it has 1 carriage. Okay, yes, it shows that you understand and it shows that you recognize that that is a difference. But apart from that, it doesn't really do much else. It is a very basic level answer. However, this is how you can turn it into a level 4 answer. So again, this is using PEA with a little sentence in the middle, which is highlighted in blue to show that you are comparing. So in contrast to level 1 to level 4, you can see it's a lot more detailed. It uses PEA twice within the same paragraph. So it makes the initial point that the train in source A is being used to transport mail and people, and so has a small mail van, a dining car, and 5 sleeping cars, showing both the advances in train manufacture and the commercialization of rail travel to enable long journeys by providing eating and sleeping facilities. This sophistication reflects significant progress in train travel and is a complete contrast to source B. That is key, complete contrast to source B. Brilliant. It shows that you understand that you're being asked to show differences, and it shows that you're going to be showing something completely different. You make your point again by saying that the steam engine in source B is an earlier model and is therefore much simpler in its design. In source B, the train is just a functional uncovered carriage with benches, as the purpose at this earlier stage of invention is to develop the mechanics of the engine, not to provide more elaborate passenger facilities. So hopefully you can see how much more in depth the level 4 answer is, how much more it goes into thinking about what the kind of repercussions are and what that tells you about rail travel, and the fact that noting that A is much more sophisticated, it's made for commercial use through rail travel for people, whereas in source B, that's not the case. It's literally just for the purpose of it's a much earlier invention. It's looking at the developing the mechanics of the engine. It doesn't need to be a passenger train yet. So yeah, hopefully this will show you how you can use PEA to get a really in-depth level 4 answer. Moving on to question 3. This then goes on to AO2, which is your analysis question. It's 12 marks. So again, I'd maybe aimed at like 5 to 6 quotes. So it could be something along the lines of, you now only need to refer to source A. Question 3 is normally only about one of the sources again. And like your paper 1, it then talks about how does the writer use language to describe the train crash. So again, you're going to want to use PEA. This obviously it's I'm talking about Romeo. I just wanted to show you again how you can go from a level 1 answer to a level 4 answer when using PEA in a bit more detail. So again, for this question, you want to be looking at language techniques. So you want to be looking at whether, word choice of the nouns, the verbs, thinking about the adjectives, thinking about any imagery, thinking about tone, everything like that. So for a PEA answer that is level 1, I've said Romeo asks what light through yonder window breaks, and this shows that there is a light coming through the window. Okay, yes, it's very similar to the example I gave you before. You're basically just saying what happened. You're not analyzing it. Level 2, Romeo asks what light through yonder window breaks. The word light suggests that whatever he is seeing is bright and dazzling. Okay, yeah, you're getting there a little bit. It's the beginnings of an analysis, but it's not really talking in depth about what that suggests Romeo is thinking. However, when you move on to level 3, using the same quote, the word light connotes a dazzling or shining element, whilst breaks suggests that this presence has emerged suddenly, possibly surprising Romeo. So yeah, that's better. You're starting to think, well, you've started to analyze more aspects of the one quote, and you're talking about what that tells you about the character. And then a level 4 answer with the same quote. The questioning element of this sentence suggests Romeo could be confused or excited in anticipation of seeing Juliet. The noun liked suggests that he sees Juliet as an angelic or holy being who provides comfort and could save him from his save him from his misery, thereby demonstrating the depth of his affections for her. So again, you can see this is really good analysis. You're talking about the fact that it's, even though I've put it as a full stop and I haven't included a question mark, always remember your grammar, even though it's a question, so it suggests something to you about his state of mind, the kind of personification of Juliet as the light, or in the next sentence as the sun, suggests how he's thinking of her as something angelic and holy, and how that contrasts with what we already know about Romeo, and the effects, the depth of his affections for her. So yeah, when you're thinking about question 3 for paper 2, use PEA, go into a lot of detail, and yeah, you'll be grand. Then going on to question 4, it is the AO3 aspect of the marking criteria. So again, this one is all about the comparative aspect. So it's worth 16 marks. And again, you have to consider both sides. So an example question would be: compare how the writers convey their different feelings and perspectives about their experiences of traveling on the train. In your answer, you could compare their different feelings and perspectives, compare the methods the writers use to convey their different feelings and perspectives, and as ever, support your response with references to both texts. So what I would suggest doing is splitting it up into 2 separate paragraphs. Paragraph 1, you talk about what their feelings are, and paragraph 2, talk about the methods. So again, it would be good to, instead of doing it like 1 paragraph for source A, 1 paragraph for source B, using it, finding any things that so if they use any of the same literary techniques to describe their different feelings or perspectives, you could analyze whether one is more or less effective than the other, whether you relate to one or more, whether you relate to one more than the other. And again, yeah, thinking about maybe like 4 quotes each per paragraph, so that you can provide some in-depth analysis. But yeah, just think about making sure that you PEA and that you are comparing whatever it is you're being asked to analyze. So in this case, the different perspectives or feelings. And then finally, the big one for this paper, which is question 5. Again, it's very similar to how paper 1 is structured. This is section B, so it's all about AO5 and 6, how and what you write. And again, it's worth 40 marks. Your task with question 5 for paper 2 will always be either to persuade or argue. So this is your chance to write a persuasive essay or a speech. The example that I had in the paper that I was looking at was cars are convenient, comfortable, and safe, and save time. However, we need to use them less by making public transport such as trains, trams, and buses cheaper, more reliable, and easier to access. Write a speech to be given at a meeting of your local council in which you argue your point of view on this statement. So one of the biggest things I can recommend for question 5 is forest. So this is talking about the different techniques, persuasive techniques that you can use. If you ever watch any politicians giving speeches, or if you do debating at school, these will be techniques that you are very familiar with. They're persuasive. So I would recommend writing this acronym in the margins of your paper, and then ticking it off when you've done at least one of each. So the A in A4 stands for alliteration. Again, alliteration, as we've seen with the previous paper, alliterative words stick out in our brains. And so if you pick them on, if you make the point to use alliteration on specific words that you want the listener or the reader to remember, that will probably be very effective. Facts, so facts, again, just something that is true, something that is known. your opinions whenever you're doing a persuasive essay, getting in your own opinions, using words like I strongly believe, in my opinion, blah, blah, blah. You have to make it personal to you, because when you speak from a place that is more personal, it is always in some way more persuasive and more relatable to your reader or your examiner. R stands for rhetorical questions. So again, you'll have seen rhetorical questions come up in many different scenarios. But yeah, asking questions of the examiner, making them think about their own perspective. E stands for emotive language. So yeah, words that can elicit some sort of emotional response and that you know will get the examiner thinking. Similes or statistics for S. So again, similes, you know what a simile is, something that is like something. Statistics, you can, as long as it's feasible, you can make up statistic for your question. So the one about cars, you could make up a statistic that was something along the lines of 30% of children surveyed said that they would prefer to cycle to school. Something like that. As long as it sounds feasible, you can just make it up. And then the final T stands for triplets. So it's something, I don't know the exact science behind it, but it's something in our brains. We love things that come in three. Again, it's something that you'll see politicians or people who are giving speeches do a lot. You say one thing, you say another, and then you round it off with a third. Yeah, always using triplets. And as I say, write this in your margin and tick it off once you have done at least one of each. And that means that your essay will be filled with persuasive techniques. So again, it's your turn now. So what I would like you to do in 5 minutes, again, I can't put a timer on the screen, but we'll do it, yeah, around about 31 to 36. Write a small paragraph, if you can, using 3 of the A-Forest techniques. I'll write the A-Forest techniques in the comments as well, so that you, alliteration, well, yeah, I'll write them in. So this one, you have to write a letter to the Minister for Education explaining your point of view on this statement. So this statement suggests that teenagers are not like adults. They learn and socialize differently and need to sleep at different times. Education needs a radical rethink to meet the needs of students. So yes, if you can write me a little paragraph in 5 minutes, once I have been able to type, that, pardon me, uses 3 of the A4. Okay, that's 32, and I've just popped them in, and it's not dimiles, it is similes. I just can't type. Yes, if you will give you 5 minutes, so 11:37, I will come back and we will go over some answers. So yeah, just pop them into the chat, and I will write my own. Okie dokie, right, fabulous. If you are still writing, just can carry on, just pop them into the chat. I can see there's a few answers already. So while you are popping that in there, I will go over my ones. So I have used triplets, I've made up a statistic, and I've used emotive language. Pardon me. So for my triplet, I said we need swift, stable, and superior reforms to education. So I've kind of used triplet and I've used some sibilants to really hammer home that point. Swift, stable, superior reforms for education. My statistic to do with the question, I tried to think of something that was feasible. So I said that 45% of students surveyed felt that their needs educationally were not being met. So again, hopefully that would you would think, oh, that's actually quite a high percentage. So we need to think about that. And then with emotive language, I said, I urge you to consider the devastating impact these outdated and archaic standards for education my grammar is not very good. I urge you to consider the devastating impact of these outdated and archaic standards for education. So again, like devastating impact, thinking about how that's going to devastate the younger generation. Outdated and archaic standards for education. Archaic connotes and suggests something that is, from the Stone Age. It's been so long since we thought about that. So yeah, that would be my example. So let's go through some of yours. I believe that this statement is true. Wonderful, brilliant to assess whether or not you believe the statement is correct. Scientific studies show that 70% of teenagers sleep later and wake up later, giving them a more fulfilled sleep cycle and making them feel refreshed. Brilliant. In my own opinion, brilliant, get your opinion in. I know that not all teenagers will benefit from the normal teaching methods and would rather have a different learning curriculum. If you were a teenager, would you want to follow something that doesn't benefit you to the maximum? Brilliant. You're putting the examiner, you're putting your reader into a position where they have to consider their own ideas. So fab. I strongly agree with the statement and believe the education system needs an extreme, rapid, radical re-evaluation where did we go? To accommodate the differing needs of teenagers compared to adults. Firstly, schools require teenagers to wake up at earlier times. Scientific evidence has proven that teenagers need to sleep at different times. Brilliant. So why should they be expected to be prepared for 8 hours of continuous learnings when their very brains are not adapted to function at such a time? In a survey conducted, 70% of children even agreed their lack of sleep has hindered their ability. Brilliant. This is all really great. So persuasive. Dear Minister of Defence, very, very good. I myself am a teenager, yet relating it to yourself, brilliant. I think that, and I know I will have a biased opinion, however, it can be quite the opposite. 80% of teenagers have said they found it extremely difficult to wake up in the morning. Yeah, I feel you. However, 75% said that they found waking up earlier at the weekends. Why? Because they get up much later. Yes. Brilliant. You're talking about the structure. I agree with the statement and urge you to do, whenever you're talking about whenever you're trying to persuade someone, saying I urge you to consider blah 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 is brilliant. Talking about the effects. What's going on? Brilliant. Yes, talking about affecting mental health. Fabulous. Yeah, so as you can see, using the A-Forest system, you are using these using these persuasive techniques in a way that doesn't really actually even feel like you are, when you're just reading it doesn't necessarily feel like, okay, this person is checking things off. It just free flows and it just becomes part of your persuasive rhetoric. So yeah, absolutely fabulous. Well done, everyone.